Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naraban Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Today, to continue our discussion on Magic the Gathering history, I'm going to talk about the Renaissance set. Now, this is a foreign language only set, and it really is two different sets under the same name of Renaissance. I'll explain that in a minute, but they sort of are considered together when you're talking about them, because they are effectively the same, except for there is some difference that I'll explain between the two of them. So, they were both released in August of 1995, and they were released mainly to a European audience because they were put out in German, French, and Italian. The German and French set were effectively the same, and they were released with 122 cards. On the other hand, the Italian set was actually different. It was released only with 60 cards. See, now we're getting the difference about it, and I'll explain what it means a little bit more in a second. So each pack of Renaissance had 8 cards in them. Now the German and French sets, they were released black bordered, they had the set symbol on them, and they were mostly cards from the Legend set. Of course, it did have some Dark, it did have some Antiquities, it had some Arabian Nights, and for the German and French sets, they had 2 unlimited cards also included in this group. Now the Italian, on the other hand, it was white bordered, and it was 60 cards, it was a lot less cards, but it was a 60 cards that were a selection of those 122 cards. So effectively, it was like a smaller subset of that set. They cut things down in order to release it for the Italian market. Now, there was a major mistake in this printing. In the French set, Winter Blast was printed without the Legend symbol. Now, there isn't much else to tell about Renaissance. It was a set similar to Chronicles, that it was a compilation set, but this mimicked Chronicles, that when Chronicles came out here in America and in Japan, these sets came out in Europe to represent sort of a unique set to Europe. Not a lot of sets have been like this, and really, vast majority of sets, when they've come out, have come out the same for different countries, and they've just been released in these languages. This was more an experiment, similar to the way that Chronicles was an experiment. So there isn't much else to say about Renaissance that I haven't said in this, or in similarly talked about in Chronicles, so let's just go about into the cards that were from this set. I do want to mention a few. These have been mentioned before because, of course, it is a compilation set, but these are the ones that I thought were important in the set that makes it unique, that were very interesting that they printed with them. There's the Urza's Lands. The Urza's Lands have always had a very good power to them because if you have all 3, you're tapping for 7 mana instead of 3. It's a great way of ramping up a lot of mana, and it works very well in artifact decks, and it still does to today. I have them in my artifact deck. Now there's Strip Mine. Strip Mine, which you could sacrifice to destroy a land, or you could tap for a colorless. It's also had very little printings over the years, so in this set is another example of when it was printed out. There's Venom. Venom's one I mentioned with the Dark. It was here in these sets. It's great. I like it a lot. I don't really use it as much anymore, but back in the day, you give something Venom, and then when something blocked it, it would kill it. And you could combine it with Lore to make it that everything would have to block a creature and then they'd all die. There's, of course, Pit Scorpion. Pit Scorpion does poison counters. 1/1, does damage to a person, gives them a poison counter. It's one of the poison counter creatures from Legends. Just, wanted to bring it out there. Poison counters were still pretty around there during this time, pretty well. And then, of course, last one I want to mention is City of Brass. It's an example of something from Arabian Nights. I actually hadn't talked about this one from before, but City of Brass has actually been in some of my decks until more recently, when some of the things when there has been cards which has really replaced it. Probably in the last, 5 years of sets, stuff has really come out which I think has replaced City of Brass. But before then, I would say there was still some practical use in it. It comes into play, and you can tap it for any color mana, but every time you tap it, you take a damage. So if you tap it for any color mana, you take a damage. It was decent that way. If you had some kind of life gain or way of preventing damage, you could tap it for any color mana. Or you could just use it if you're in a very mana, like a rainbow deck. It was very useful because you could take that damage to get the mana that maybe you didn't have from your other cards, just in case you needed it. So that's it today. I just wanted to briefly go over the Renaissance set and what it really was and some things that it represented. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. It shows your support for the channel and the Empire. Please subscribe if you already haven't. We're always looking for more members, more citizens of the Empire. And please share this video if you know anybody that would learn anything from it or would just enjoy watching it. And until next time, I bid you farewell.